It's the Fitness Lab Pittsburgh podcast, a new episode every week. A podcast about movement, part of making your life complete. Fitness Lab Pittsburgh, aka FitLabPGH, brings you interviews with people in the Pittsburgh area who understand movement is part of what makes life complete. Looking for a new movement idea or just want to hear interesting stories about people who make movement a priority? This is the podcast for you. Whether you consider the gym, dojo, or fitness studio your third place, or just want to learn more about movement, activity, and fitness to enhance your life, give FitLabPGH a listen. We interview locals in the Pittsburgh area who make Pittsburgh a great place to move. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Subscribing is free and gives you notifications when we release new episodes. Each podcast episode will be long enough to pique your interest and short enough to hold your attention. Have an idea for an episode? Know somebody we should interview? Or just want to connect with us? Drop us an email, fitlabpgh@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter or Instagram at FITLABPGH. Already a fan of FitLabPGH? Check out our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast for movement professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers weekly interviews with movement professionals featuring topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope you enjoy our next interview, starting now. FitLabPGH and our sister podcast, Moving to Live, firmly believe that movement should be treated as a lifestyle, not just an activity. That's why 3 times a week, FitLabPGH releases movement tips and lifestyle hacks every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, in addition to our FitLab Pittsburgh features every Thursday and our podcast, which we release every Sunday. If you like what you're doing, leave us some feedback on Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast app you're listening to. Drop us an email with suggestions for future features, future movement tips and lifestyle hacks, or potentially future guests. We're happy to have traveled up to Wexford for the upcoming episode that you'll hear shortly. We talked to Frank Velasquez for the 3rd time. Frank is always a wealth of information, and it's a great idea to know who to contact in the Pittsburgh area when you need information on rehabilitation and sports performance. Thanks again, Frank. FitLabPGH back with another podcast visit. We are a podcast that firmly believes that movement should be treated as a lifestyle, not just an activity. We're here with our first 3-time guest. This time we are up in Wexford. We're in the new facility for Allegheny Health, Sports Performance, and Physical Therapy. They are in the Wexford Health Wellness Pavilion in Wexford, Pennsylvania. We have previously been in their Cool Springs facility, and we are with Frank Velasquez, who is going to tell us a little bit about the facility and give you some ideas for training in the spring and summer. Frank, thanks for taking time to once again talk to FitLabPGH and give us a tour of the new facility.
Ben and Lisa, thank you very much for having me. I am humbled and honored to be your first 3-time offender. That's cool. I appreciate you guys coming back for the third visit. So we are up here in the north. We've been up here for 3 years, up until January, which was last month. We were in the Health and Wellness Pavilion, which they are converting into a 160-bed hospital. AHN has expended the resources to take that beautiful Health and Wellness Pavilion and make it into a hospital for the North Hills residents. But over the course of the past year, we've been working to move our sports performance department out of the pavilion, and we were able to find a beautiful space just not far down the road in the Wexford Plaza. If you're from the North Hills and you're familiar with where Whole Foods is and Levin Furniture and the New Balance store, right across from the post office in Wexford and the Wexford Flats is the Plaza. We're in that space, and we have a 6,000 square foot facility, and we're very excited about it. It has really allowed us to grow our department, which we were not able to do in the pavilion. You're familiar with our Cool Springs facility, which is a gem, and we don't go without there. We have lots of bells and whistles as well as our necessities, our nuts and bolts. Now we have up here our cryotherapy sauna, our anti-gravity treadmill, our Dynavision reaction machine, our vibration units. We have some of those tools to take our services to the next level for the people in the North Hills.
And for people who may have been familiar with you in the Wellness Pavilion, how many square feet were you there, whereas you're now 6,000 square feet here?
We had a 5,000 square foot space in the pavilion that was shared originally with just physical therapy and occupational therapy and ourselves. So we had about a third of it. And over the course of the 3 years, we had some different specialty pulmonary and oncology therapies come in, cardiac rehabilitation came in. So we were slowly losing our it was getting busy and full. And, we are strength coaches and we run a service where we're loud and we're throwing medicine balls around and weights and upstairs they're doing surgery and we have cardiac rehab patients there. So it was the right time for us to make the move and Allegheny Health Network supported that and gave us the resources to be able to do this.
And I know some people who are listening to this, if they're just starting their movement careers or maybe they've been fortunate enough never to be injured, you kind of think of physical therapy as you go and the physician says, well, you need 12 weeks of physical therapy, or your insurance says we'll cover 12 visits over the course of the next 3 months. And you and I both know that returning somebody to sports performance, whether there's somebody who wants to get out and just jog 3 times a week, or somebody who's maybe a high school athlete who wants to play in college, or a college athlete who maybe hopes to get drafted, or I know you also have professional athletes training here. Talk about how the AHN sports performance model works. Somebody comes to you, maybe a high school student with an ankle sprain, and how you progress them through physical therapy, beyond physical therapy, so that they have a minimal chance of having a re-injury because they're not completely rehabilitated.
Yeah, that's exactly what our niche is. And it's when I was in professional sports and worked at the Division I college level when I was at Michigan, our athletes had the physical therapy, the athletic trainers, the strength coaches, the mental skills coach, the massage therapist, the nutritionist, all at their fingertips in one facility. So when I got out of professional baseball, I opened up my own place, as you know, up in Cranberry, 2012, and tried to recreate that, going off the IMG model and the Exos and the API, to a smaller level. And it was very progressive for Pittsburgh at the time. And AHN has always been close to me because of the medical director, Dr. Patrick DeMeo. And in time, they basically brought me on board to do the same thing with them. So we get this kid coming in with the ankle sprain and, going to a traditional therapist. They will take the swelling away, get his range of motion back, get his pain under control, and start a base level of strength training. And before you know it, the visits might be up, or the therapist is taking them as far as he or she can take them. And then they discharge and say, okay, Ben, go back to practice and really make up the last 20 to 25% on your own. So here, we keep them here. Our therapists are very well versed in the athlete, the active adult, the developing youth, and we have the facility to not only get them to that point, but then get them the rest of the 20 to 25% back because of the equipment we have, because of our knowledge base, and because of our model, where you come in for therapy. Eventually, our therapist will say, okay, Ben, you're going to start collaborating with our strength staff because I've gotten you to this point. They're going to start to integrate with us and take you to the next level. So we get you all the way there, and then the therapist will discharge you. You're back to playing, and we have a transition program which allows you to stay on for another month at a very low cost out of pocket to continue your strength training under the watchful eye of our coaches and our therapists. So it's really a great model, and it helps reduce the risk of reoccurring injuries and sets you up to dominate back on the mat, the court, or the field.
And I know you and I are both of the age where we remember where typically physical therapists were very reluctant to initially start out with movement. There were a few progressive physical therapists, but very often if somebody would come with an ankle sprain, and this would even be physicians too, it's like, well, we need to immobilize it or keep minimal motion. And then you would get a significant amount of muscular atrophy. And I know I went through your Cool Springs facility once a week for 8 or 9 weeks when I herniated a disc over a year ago. And I think the one thing that really resonated with me is intellectually, from reading in my profession, I knew that this was something that was going to get better. But you still have that internal fear because sometimes when you move, it hurts. And I know the physical therapist there would constantly say, don't be afraid of your back. You're not going to hurt it any worse. Move. And sometimes just hearing from somebody who's able to tell you that, even if you know it intellectually, is a benefit. Without
a doubt. I mean, those that want to get better will get better. And movement, they say motion is lotion for the joints. And that's exactly what we get our people. There is a point of time or a period of time where they are on the table and with the skilled hands of our practitioners. But as soon as they deem ready, they are up and they are into the arena. And we are, working on imbalances and working on and strengthening them in places where they need to strengthen and stretch them in places where they need to stretch to help take the stress off of whatever body part that's ailing them.
I know as somebody who is relatively late to the social media game, if I want to be highly amused, I can get on Instagram, and it seems like everybody is an expert in anything. So if you're a physical therapist or a chiropractor or a physician or an athletic trainer or a personal trainer, all of a sudden you're an expert in everything from nutrition to sports performance to injury rehab to injury prevention to every other thing regarding life. And I think what I've seen with AHN Sports Performance is you have people who wear multiple hats. In your case, you're a strength coach and you're a certified athletic trainer. But there are experts and there are people who say, well, we need to progress you to somebody else. Was this a conscious choice? Because I know a lot of clinics and places will say, well, we can take you literally from cradle to grave with one or two people. And I know you have a relatively large team, soon to grow larger if everything works out.
I have a firm belief that I can do anything, but I can't do everything. And I am basically not as good without my team. We have a high performance team and very proud of them. They're very qualified, but they're needed and they all have their expertise. And the important thing is we're all pulling on the same end of the rope and speaking the same language. So it's something that's taken time to build, but coming from the U of M and coming from, professional baseball, that's exactly the culture I grew up in and wanted to create that in the medical world where we're dealing with the masses. There's so many more people like us than there are Mike Trouts of the world.
And we're interviewing Frank a day or two after he's signed his huge record-breaking contract, for those of you who are wondering why that name was brought up. I know one of the things that we talked about before we started recording is very rarely do people think about what they need to do before they're injured or before they have a problem. We all like to think that we are invincible, or in some cases, if you're a parent and you have a kid, you never think, well, my kid may become injured in a sport. And then you kind of start scrambling and you may not make the best choices because your kid says, hey, mom, I want to play. I want to play. I want to play. So for somebody who's listening to this in the Pittsburgh area and they're like, maybe I'm going to use AGH, maybe I'm going to use somebody else. But if I can think proactively before the effect, what am I looking for when my son or daughter is injured? How do I know who I should go to and make sure that it's somebody who's competent so they don't try to overstep their boundaries? What are some things they should look for?
Well, that's a great question. There's lots of different avenues you can take. You can never go wrong going with a sports medicine trained primary care physician. They're usually linked up with some type of sports minded physical therapy facility. And hopefully that person is linked up to a place like ours. If it's not in their space, they can refer you to someone, a sports performance training center or a high performance training center, so to speak. But you want to look for credentials. You want your doctor to be a doctor and they've gone to medical school. And who did he do his fellowship under? Was it Jimmy Andrews? Was it Patrick DeMeo? Where did he learn his skills? If you're going for a therapist, the DPT is the top of the line there, and it's nice to have that dual credential. We are very versatile. Like you said, our PTs are also ATCs. Some of our PTs are CSCSs, and our strength coaches are athletic trainers. So it's nice to have those letters after your name that they're skilled in working with that active adult or athlete. And then your strength coaches is, I'm a big fan of the CSCS, the Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist certification. It carries weight. It lets me know that person went through 4 years of college in an exercise related science and then had to sit for a national exam. So it's not a certification or some letters you can get after a weekend course. So those are the things you look for, the credentials and the lettering and certification that are after your physician, after your physical therapist, after your strength and conditioning specialist.
And I know that people who are well credentialed are going to brag about that. You're going to be able to look up whatever the website is, and they're going to tell you on the website probably where they went to school, what their experience is, what their certifications. Whereas some places you can look up on the website and they'll just say has worked with professional athletes. And I know when you look on the AHN website for you, it mentions that you work with professional athletes, but it also mentions the fact that you went to the University of Michigan. It mentions the fact that you are an athletic trainer and a CSCS. And I think that's a good thing to look for, is people bragging, these are my skills, not these are the people I work with or what I've done.
Yeah. I mean, you always go, it's something you live by, is if you have to tell me how good you are, then you must not be that good. Now you have to market, on websites, whether it be radio or digital or, television. There is a marketing part of this. But we've always done a lot of our marketing, even back when I was with my own business, grassroots. I mean, we were out in the communities, and we're covering road races and cross country meets and health fairs, and we're going to watch our kids perform when we can. And that goes a long way, in the South Hills community with Cool Springs and what we're doing up here. So, you want to be down to earth, and I've never been one to toot my own horn. I let other people do that for us. And, we just try our best to provide that quality service every day.
We know that the weather's starting to get warmer. It's down in the 20s at night now, but it's warming up into the 50s. It might even hit 60 degrees today. Some people are now deciding, hey, this is the time to start my New Year's resolution, not when it's cold. Some people prefer to exercise outside. And I know one of the things that a facility like the Sports Performance Center can do is it can prepare people before they get hurt. So can you talk a little bit for somebody who isn't injured? They say, I know I need to do something. I'm not really sure. I just want to join a general health and fitness facility. I'm not going to name any gyms because there's some that are very good. There's some that are fly by night. But again, you're often going to struggle to find out if the person that you're working with is credentialed and does know what they're talking about. So somebody who is not injured, how can sports performance and physical therapy with AHN help them?
Well, I mean, the weather's getting nicer. That's great for everybody in the area. And, people are becoming more active this time of year. And my advice to them is just start slow and easy. Don't dive head first into this. Listen to your body. Not everyone's going to come to a facility like ours. Some people will find us and they may be referred by a friend or a relative, and it's something they need. Some people don't need it, and they're very diligent and they have some programming knowledge and they want to get after it. Just be careful not to be your own worst enemy, and listen to your body and kind of bite off small bites as opposed to big chunks of activity where you can't walk the next day or I can't wash my hair the next day. That's not what you want. It really comes down to if you're starting from zero foundational strength, making sure we're doing some core work, some simple things, planks, no equipment needed, side planks. Get a set of ankle bands and put them around your knees and start doing some clamshells and some different walks to work your glutes, your butt cheeks, to protect those hips. And then get a piece of resistive band or tubing and start doing some pinch and pulls and some retractions and start working the muscles in between your shoulder blades, your quote unquote posture muscles. And those three areas, Ben, will really help build some foundation blocks. So if you want to start doing a walk or a walk jog program, you would reduce the risk of injury significantly if you were to start doing some activations, low level strength training.
And I know I always ask strength and sports performance people when I talk to them their thoughts on the time frame to train for a marathon. I know we've got the Pittsburgh Marathon coming up, and we're fortunate that they have a number of events. You can do the half marathon, you can do the relay. We all know that many people suddenly find out when the weather warms up that maybe they've neglected their training. Somebody who's at this point, we're about
5 weeks.
5 weeks from the Pittsburgh Marathon. If they're just starting their training for the marathon, any words of advice that you might give? And I'm putting you on the spot with this question. You're grinning at me.
Right. Well, I'm signed up for the half. I'm about 8.5 miles in right now, so I'm okay. Yeah. If you're just getting going with your running, it takes 12 to 16 weeks to really train properly, to make sure you cross the finish line vertical. And that's the important part. Is if you're just starting now, understand that it probably won't be a PR for you, a personal best or a personal record. A half marathon you can get away with probably, if you're able to do 4 or 5 miles now, you'll be able to get up to maybe a 10 mile long run before your half marathon. A full marathon, you'd be struggling. You will struggle if you're just starting now. So, you want to get in your 2 to 3 runs a week. You have your long run, you have a mid distance and some type of speed work if you want. And then you're going to strength train. You should strength train 1 to 2 days a week, and then you have 2 days of recovery. That fills up your week, and you have to be pretty diligent about it. There's very little room for error if you're starting now. But you'd be able to sneak through a half, and the full, you may want to postpone it till the fall.
And I know one of the things that people often think about, and I'm sure you've heard this from people that you've met before as well, I'm an adult now, I'm too old to be competitive, or I'm too old to do things. And you think of a lot of these sports performance centers as being directed towards middle school athletes, high school athletes, college athletes when they're home for spring break, summer break, Christmas break. And you very rarely think of them as being used for adults who maybe are runners, maybe they're cyclists, maybe they're not professional, but fairly competitive amateur golfers. Talk about what somebody who isn't involved with a high school sport, how they can make use of sports performance physical therapy here at AHN.
Without a doubt. I mean, some of our greatest clients and success stories are masters level swimmers and masters level triathletes and dual athletes. I'm talking 75, 80-year-old clients, people, which is so inspiring for us. But yeah, they are good at what they do, running, swimming, biking, what have you, playing. Players play. Players don't like to practice, as Mr. Iverson said years ago. Practice? What's practice? Most kids they don't dig the strength training part of it, but the adults, the ones you're referring to now, they get it. They understand where this fits in their program, and it allows them to do what they love to do for longer, because we are protecting their joints. We are unwinding their body from the repetitive motion, whether it be biking or running or swimming, what have you, playing tennis, overuse of the shoulder. So we're just unwinding, protecting the joints, and getting them on basic level programs that can help stabilize, help reduce the risk of injury. And then, of course, everyone wants to do what they do a little better, so we work on enhancing performance across the board.
I know as somebody who's in the field, if I have a question about something, I have a whole list of people that I can email or text, including you, and you'll get back to me and explain it. But you mentioned when you first started describing your new facility here, some of the things you had in addition to what's in down in Cool Springs. And I was wondering if you could talk about a few of those things that people who are listening may not be familiar with. The cryosauna, you have vibration, you have an anti-gravity treadmill. And these are things that you may hear thrown around, or you may be watching a professional sports game and say, oh, so-and-so came back from an injury, and they contribute their success to whatever it is. So maybe those three things, if you could briefly describe what they are and any other cool bells and whistles that listeners may not be aware of, that they may say, oh, that's something that could benefit me, or I know somebody who they may be looking for something like that.
I thank you for asking this question, because this is part of our marketing deal. And a lot of people, well, not a lot. One, they don't know we have these things, these luxury pieces of equipment. They're nice to have. We know our staff is very good with our hands and what we have in between our ears. We can get by without it, but it's very nice having some of these techie or advanced technology pieces of equipment, because they work. There's a lot out there, Ben, that people will come at us with that we didn't bring on, but the pieces we did, they really have value and they really add to our services. So our anti-gravity treadmill, it was actually a gravity treadmill when it was designed by the NASA engineers years ago. When we had the space shuttle program, it proved to be too big for the space shuttle, so it was nixed. They didn't go with it. So the engineers, instead of just tossing it, they reversed the technology, and instead of making you heavier on the treadmill, they made you lighter on the treadmill, and surrounded it with a pressurized tent, made you lighter, and then they started marketing it to performance centers, physical therapy centers to use for post-operative, anything from the waist down, low back, knees, hips, ankles, feet, where we can get the client, patient, customer up and get them ambulating without pain. We can take up to 50 or 60% off of somebody to get them doing those things without pain, starting to rework biomechanical movement, and getting them back to full strength quicker. We also work with our healthy clients, our runners. We were just talking about distance runners, get them on the anti-gravity. They come in for a midweek run. They did, let's say 15 over the weekend. They want to get 5 or 6 in. We can take 10 or 20% off of that person and have them go through their run at lesser pounding on the hips and knees. So there's a lot of benefits to that anti-gravity treadmill. Another piece is our cryotherapy unit. Most athletes I know have gone through a cold tub at one point or another to really freshen up dead legs, heavy legs. And cold water immersion, you're looking at 45 to 50 degrees, the water, 10 or 12 minute process, mostly from the waist down. When I was with the Pirates, we had some clowns that would go in from the neck down to get the total body. The cryo, instead of using cold water, uses nitrogen gas. And it is a chamber that has your body encapsulated from the neck down. And we talked about the 45 degrees with the water. This is about negative 160 Fahrenheit at level 1. So it's extremely colder, but it does not penetrate the soft tissue as deep as cold water does. So we're able to stay in there. It's a 3-minute process, but the nitrogen does penetrate subcutaneous. So it does signal to the brain that it's an extremely cold environment. All the blood rushes to the core to protect our organs. Kind of a scary thought. And then you get a significantly larger release of endorphins and hormones that knock down inflammation. And that's how that cryo works. We have great success with arthritic patients and clients. It helps to manage their inflammation. We're not reversing arthritis by any means, but it does help them live a little higher quality of life from week to week. And then we have a great deal of success with our athletes and our high performers after practices, after games, during those times, preseason or during the season where they're just kind of dragging and their legs feel heavy. It can really help rejuvenate them and have them bounce back faster. So those are 2 pieces that we have.
And I know that's for people who are listening, they're going, well, why can't I buy a treadmill or one of these devices for home? These are relatively pricey investments. I know that there are some elite distance runners who actually own one of those treadmills, and they may do 50 to 60% of their mileage on it because it allows them to do well over 100 miles without the pounding. But generally, you have to go to a facility that offers these. And I think, to touch on the fact, just my own personal opinion, if you're going to go to a facility that has one of these, it's probably a good idea to have one that is a medical related facility versus a wellness, because you're going to have all of the responsibilities that a medical facility is going to say, hey, we need to consider this for liability, that for liability. We're going to make sure it's maintained on a regular basis, as opposed to getting into the sauna and all of a sudden realizing that, oops, it gets a little colder than it was supposed to.
That's right. They with the high performance comes higher liability, and we take it very serious, the people we put in there, and our policies and procedures of utilizing these equipment. To your point, they are not like buying a set of dumbbells. But there again, it has its place. Not everyone goes in it, and we're very fortunate to have these pieces. I really like to thank AHN and Dr. Patrick DeMeo for all the support they give us to really allow us to get the things we need to do our job better.
We're talking with Frank Velasquez. He is the Director of Sports Performance for Allegheny Health Network. They have facilities in Cool Springs. They have facilities now up in Wexford. We'll make sure we have in the show notes some links to Frank has given us some movement tips and lifestyle hacks in the past, and we're probably going to convince him in a few minutes to do the same. Frank, I want to thank you once again for talking about what you do and explaining the importance of people who want to live an active lifestyle, of knowing where to go when problems arise or they want to take that activity to a higher level.
Thanks, Ben. It's been a pleasure, and this is truly our passion, and it keeps me home with my family, and really it's rewarding, and it keeps me going on the professional side. And if anyone could utilize our services in the North Hills, don't hesitate. 724-934-2440, Wexford Plaza, Wexford, PA.
Thanks for listening to the latest episode of FitLabPGH, brought to you by Moving to Live. Intro and exit music is Marathon Man by Jason Shaw. Check out the show notes for contact info for our latest guests, links to other information mentioned in the episode, and links to our sister podcast, Moving to Live. Moving to Live is a podcast about movement and exercise for professionals and amateur aficionados. Moving to Live offers topics from career development to coaching tips and education resources to advice for parents of student athletes. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or Google Play, or check out our website for other subscription options. Your free subscription gets you notified when we release a new episode. Questions, comments, suggestions? Email us at fitlabpgh@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter and Instagram at fitlabpgh and like us on Facebook. If you enjoy our podcasts, please tell your friends about us and consider leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Make FitLabPGH a go-to place to learn more about movement in the Pittsburgh area. Until next time, keep on moving.